They say anyone who buys the 12900K is wasting their money. They're not wrong. They also say that you can buy a 12700K for half the price and get the same performance. Well, today, my friends, we're gonna find that out. This video was brought to you by Mobius and Pat Duffy. They are the two guys that paid for this CPU to bring this testing to you. So, the 12700K, real talk here. A lot of people went for this one after people learned that the jig was up about the E-core. Essentially, the E-cores, all they do is just rob performance and create a hassle. Now, when you actually disable the E-cores, the cache that the E-cores were kind of holding on to get released over to the big cores. You can kind of see where I'm going with this now, right? Now, the 12900K has 4 more E-cores than the 12700K. When you turn off the E-cores on this one, the big cores get 5 more megabytes of cache. Now, on paper, that is the only real difference between these CPUs. When you turn off the E-cores, the 12900K has 30 megabytes of cache, the 12700K has 25 megabytes of cache. That couldn't possibly provide that much of an FPS boost, could it? Not for $200 anyway. So the plan for today then, we're gonna take both of these CPUs. Well, actually, I am going to take the worst 12900K that I have. I'm not gonna use the best one because that's kind of an unrealistic comparison. The odds of getting a good 12900K is like less than 1%, right? You're probably gonna have an average one. So we're gonna take the worst one that I have and compare it with the one 12700K that I have. I figured that would give more of a balanced, fair benchmark here. Now, it wouldn't be a Frame Chasers video if we didn't max these bitches out. So I'm going to delid both of these CPUs, run them at their absolute maximums, and then we're gonna do some benchmarks and see what really is the FPS difference between these two when you overclock them both to the moon. Right now, the 12700K is on sale for $400. The 12900K is on sale for like $620. I'll post the links down below in case you want to get one of these. But what does that $200 give you really? Well, let's go run the benchmarks and find out. Alright, so right off the bat, this is the 12900K that I'm going to be using here. You can see right there, it's probably one of the worst ones that you're going to get. So the final clocks that we ended up using for this one was 5.2 gigahertz all-core. And the memory speed that we landed with was 4000 megahertz C15. Now, these two clocks you should be able to achieve on any 12900K that you buy today. I don't think you're going to get a worse one than this. Do not copy the voltages you see on the right. This is just a screenshot that I took during testing. The voltages that you see are not the ones that I use, so do not, just don't. Okay, the 12700K now. When I first saw this picture, I was quite shocked at how bad the silicon quality was on these 12700Ks. This is significantly worse silicon than the worst 12900K that I have. So you can give Intel props for binning these things down as hard as they are. But with that being said, it didn't make too much of a difference while it was delidded, right? I got this thing to 5.1 gigahertz all-core. Now, here was another caveat with this chip. I could not get the memory controller to run at 4000 megahertz to save my life. So not only are the cores binned lower, but the memory controllers are also binned lower on these chips. So the final memory clock that I could actually get on this one was 3900 megahertz C15. So with this chip, we lost 2% clock speed on the core and 2% clock speed on the memory over the 12900K, but we saved $220. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. So 1% clock speed per $100. Sure, okay, 12700K is a better deal. But to confirm, let's roll the benchmarks. So, to start off, I saw that 3D Mark has a new synthetic CPU benchmark. It tests multi-core, single-core, quad, 8, 16, all the things. So, if it's going to show up any difference between these two, it should show up on this 3D Mark benchmark, right? So, let's see the results here. Nothing. They are the exact same CPU. All the scores are within margin of error. So, that 100 megahertz doesn't even make a difference on this one at all. So, and neither does that cache for that matter. So far we have a tie between the two CPUs. Next up, Civilization 6. The total time it takes to complete the next round is how much time the CPU can process the artificial intelligence. So the lower the number, the better on these two CPUs. So let's check out the results and see which CPU is faster. Nothing. They are the exact same again. So, 2 for 2. These CPUs are identical. And the Reddit mob is correct. Ugh, for once in their lives. Next up, CSGO, the usual. This one has to show a difference, right? This game loves cash. The more cash you throw at this game, the faster she runs. So this is just a built-in benchmark that we always use. Engine test only, no latency, no internet connection, nothing like that. So purely synthetic, just for scientific purposes. It doesn't matter if you have either of these CPUs, they will both get thousands of FPS if you actually play this game. So let's look at the theoretical difference between these two CPUs. Well, there's your 2% right there. So we have a 2.5% victory for the 12900K. There's your 100 megahertz. Nothing to see here. Let's move on. Borderlands 2, the horrible console port, but the ultimate test for single thread performance. This is probably going to be our biggest gap here today. We have a whopping 18% victory for the 12900K. So if you are a retro gamer or a emulator console port player, then that's, you know, $200 extra does actually get you 20% performance. Next up, we have Rift Breaker. This is your RTS, as many millions of units on the screen as possible type of benchmark. So let's see if having that cache fill up with all these units, if that's going to make the difference here. And here we have a 6% victory for the 12900K. 6% feels like it makes a lot more sense, just based on the clock speed and the cache and everything. That 18% prior to this was like a total outlier. 6% seems like more legit about what you would see on these two CPUs. Shadow of the Tomb Raider up next. Just another game that nobody plays, but everyone uses for benchmarks to see theoretical differences. It does scale quite well with anything you throw at it, so that is like one of the benefits to this benchmark. So let's see what the theoretical differences are on this engine. So we got an 8% victory for the 12900K here. At least we're starting to see some kind of a trend between these two CPUs on how much faster that cache is actually giving the 12900K. So 8% victory for this one. Quite not worth $200, but at least, you know, you're starting to see, okay, where your money is actually going.
Primary objective is to eliminate all enemies. Attack!
Last but not least, we got Warzone. This is the most difficult game to benchmark, and also the game that shows the largest differences between architectures and overclock settings. So right off the bat, you can see that the 12700K is having a tough time keeping the graphics card pegged over 90% usage, whereas the 12900K is consistently holding that GPU above 90% usage. That's a key difference here. So the 12900K is actually able to pull more work from the GPU at 1080p. So the biggest difference we see here is actually up to 10%, but on average, 6% is actually faster. So whether that's worth $200 to you or not is up to you. But if I was a 1080p gamer, yeah, I would be going for that 12900K. If I was a 1440p gamer, then you don't really need to get more FPS than that 12700K is giving you. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, yeah, I would say on average about 6%, maximum 10% difference between these two. 10% is quite a bit though, man. I mean, you can see sometimes that 12900K is hitting, 250, 260 FPS. 12700K is at 230. So is that going to, make you a worse player? No, not at all. Anything over 200 in this game is just fine to play with. So yeah, I don't even know what to say. It is what it is, right? You can take the data as you will for yourself. Also, that being said, if you do have a better 12900K, then you can pull more frames out of it, right? Better memory controller, higher core speed, etc. All right, boys, that's it. So anywhere from, ignoring Borderlands, that's really an outlier. Anywhere from 0 to about 10% performance difference, on average about 6% when they're both maxed out. The internet wasn't wrong, but they weren't correct either. The performance is not the exact same. Not for me anyway, but for most people it is the same. For about 90% of, I would say, gamers, the performance, they're not going to notice a difference, right? So for $200 of savings, this is probably going to be the GOAT or the go-to. I just realized that GOAT and go-to have the same letters. Anyway, this probably is going to be the go-to for most people because you can take that $200, put it towards a nicer motherboard, nicer SSD. Samsung 980 Pros were about $250 on Amazon. Link to that below. Take the savings, put it towards that. Much better. 12700K is going to be for your budget competitive gamers. The 12900K is going to be for your enthusiast, I need the fastest at all costs gamers. Now, one quick point I want to make. The 10900K actually performs the same as a 12700K, except in titles like Borderlands. Emulators, console ports, those kind of games, this does perform better. But if you're already on a 10900K, this is a complete side grade for you. Then, what about the 12900KS coming out? Well, that one is going to be tricky because the 12... Okay, so there's a guy on overclocked.net forum who already has a 12900K. You can go over to that forum. He leaked his overclocking numbers already, and the 12900KS isn't that much of a better bin than my worst one, which is a little alarming. So I don't think Intel actually binned those too heavily. It seems like what they actually did was just overvolted the shit out of them to make them run that fast out of the box. So this time, I would actually skip the 12900KS. And here's why. Unless you're actually guaranteed another 100 or 200 megahertz on top, even then, that's not worth the extra $130 that it's going to be, right? If I can get 5.2 gigahertz on all 12900Ks, the one in that forum that guy has right now, that one only does 5.2 as well. So essentially, you're spending $130 more, and you might get the same garbage that you already had, right? You might as well just get the i7 at that point, you know what I'm saying? And unlike the jump from the 7 to the 9, where you get those 5 extra megs of cache, the 12900KS does not give you any more cache. So the performance difference will literally be less than 1%. Okay, now on the topic of DDR5, here's another one, okay? So, do you take the $200 savings of this and get DDR5? No, I would say not. DDR4 is still just as fast or faster than DDR5 at the current moment. So you're actually better off taking the savings of a cheaper motherboard and cheaper DDR4B die and springing for the 12900K. You can always add faster RAM, but you can never add cache. You know what I'm saying? When building a rig and overclocking, you have to make all your purchasing decisions over things that you cannot add yourself. Things that you can add yourself later, you can always add. I mean, you can always add those, right? Cache, you can never add more cache. So thanks again to the boys for buying this for me. Again, without them, I couldn't have brought you this testing, and I hope with that, we close this debate once and for all. Now we know exactly how much performance the i9 can get over the i7. Worst case scenario for the i9. Anyway, boys, hope you learned something, and if you like the content, hit that subscribe button, do all that YouTube SEO stuff, like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you got the i7 or the i9 and why. And if you liked the educational content today, hit that bell notification so you don't miss the next one. We have 12600K and way more content coming up. Secret new build as well. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Talk to you later.